Hello everyone, I'm Zahra and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2015. These are not in any particular order. The first book I wanted to talk about was The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender. I happened to know about this book from a couple of booktubers who did reviews on it. One was Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings, and the other was Leslie from Get Bookish. I'll link those two accounts down below. What I loved about this book, well, before I tell you what I loved about this book, a quick synopsis. So it's about this girl who can taste feelings in food. So if someone cooks her something and she eats it, she can taste whatever that cook felt while preparing the food. And she finds this out when she's around 8 or 9 years old. And we see her growing up and how is she dealing with this ability, how is she, because it does complicate her life, and we learn about her family and the family issues and secrets that she starts finding out because of her ability. And what I loved the most about this book was that the author had this way of writing that made a lot of moments in the book very memorable, and it evoked a lot of emotions. And I recommended it to a lot of people and they enjoyed it. It's a very quick read, but it's a kind of book that you would definitely pick up again and read because of how it made you feel. The second book that I wanted to talk about was Carlos Ruiz Zafón's The Shadow of the Wind. This is another book that I found out about because of BookTube. Max over at Well Done Books raves about this book and says that it's one of his best books of all time. So I picked it up and I was not disappointed. This book is about this boy back in 1945, this Spanish boy who is the son of a bookseller. He stumbles across a book and he reads it and loves it, but he can't find much about the author or any of his other works. There's a mystery surrounding that book that follows him throughout the rest of his life that's being described in this book. And it gets dark at times, especially the closer he gets to solving this mystery. And what I absolutely loved about this book was that there were so many characters in the book and each one was fully fledged, and I loved each and every one of them for different reasons. And I loved the ambiance that the author gave Barcelona, because it's set in Barcelona, and he gives the city such a vibe that I want to go there just to see if it really feels the way he describes. So it's definitely one of the books that I loved, not just because of the story itself, but also because of the writing style. The next book I wanted to talk about is yet again a book that was reviewed on BookTube. It was mentioned by Ashley over at Climb the Stacks, and also by Rincey from Rincey Reads. And when I stumbled across it in a used bookstore and found that it wasn't that long, I picked it up. It's basically about Janie, who is a beautiful African-American woman in the 1930s, and about her quest through life from when she's a teenager all the way into almost middle age. And it not only talks about racism or what the Black or African-American society was like back then, but also about sexism within society. And one of my favorite parts about the book were quite in the beginning, where Janie's grandma is giving her advice, and she tells her that Black women are like the mules of the world because the white man expects the Black man to do his job, and then the Black man expects the Black woman to do his job and the white man's job. And that really rang true to me to an extent, at least for that time period. And I loved the way that Zora Neale Hurston wove this character and made her grow into something more independent. And she starts off a little naive and headstrong. She continues being headstrong, but as she's impulsive, she also learns how to be independent and to speak up for herself, which is what I loved about the book. The next book I wanted to talk about is An Unnecessary Woman by Rabi' Alamuddin. Now, I picked this up because a friend of mine was reading it, so I thought I'd read along, and I was pleasantly surprised with this book. It's about a woman who lives in Beirut. She's an older lady, and all she does is basically translate books and works of literature, but not show them to anybody. She loves books. She used to run a bookstore, and talks about her life. How did she cope with the civil war when it was happening in Beirut, and how did she survive it? And what I loved about it was how this I think it spoke to the hermit in me, and the introvert, because this woman is really introverted, but at the same time she has this sense of humor about her. She has these self-deprecating remarks that she makes all the time, which I found funny, and I would definitely recommend this book. The next book I wanted to talk about is George Orwell's 1984, and I picked it up because I wanted to read a classic, and this was a fairly short one. I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, because didn't think I didn't think dystopian was even a thing back when this book was published, but apparently it was. It's about the year 1984, but it's set in a dystopian world, and I found this book eerie and creepy because it does ring true. A lot of what's happening in here is happening today to an extent. A lot of the things that the author imagined 50 years ago or 60 years ago is actually true today, about government censorship, freedom of speech, and whatnot. Now, I didn't really care about the characters in the book, but I cared about the world that this author built. The next book I want to talk about is Zadie Smith's On Beauty. Again, this is another book. Well, not particularly the book, but the author is an author that I picked up because of all of the buzz that I heard on BookTube about all of her books, and I thought I'd give her a try. When I picked this up, I wasn't very optimistic because I kind of found the title to be a little pretentious. I thought the book might be a little too literary for me. I love reading literary fiction, but sometimes when it's a little too difficult to get through, I don't enjoy it as much. But this book was the opposite of that. So it's set in a college town, and it talks about the academic life, professors, students, and stuff like that, about a family of mixed race, where the father is a white professor and the mother is a black woman who works in a hospital, and their children. And what I loved about the book is that it did not take itself too seriously. It discussed serious issues and things that I haven't read about before. For example, about political issues in Haiti, or Haiti, is it Haiti? Haiti. But at the same time, the characters were not characters that you would love. They were very flawed, but the writing style was very light for such a heavy subject matter. The next book I wanted to talk about is Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. I've been wanting to read this book for quite a long time. I had a physical copy of the book, but because I love the book so much, as soon as I finished it, I basically gave it to my friend as a Christmas present, so that I'll have someone else to talk with about the book. And it's also another dystopian novel, which is set in the near future, in which the world, or at least America, is no longer America. It's called the Republic of Gilead, and it's run by a mode of government which is a theocracy. Women do not have any rights. All they're there to do is either reproduce or take care of the men. They're not allowed to think for themselves. And the writing style in this book was very straightforward, very cold-hearted, not really emotional, but that clinical sense that it had is what struck a chord with me. You get to see different timelines in the book. It goes back and forth from how did things get to the way they are, and then the other part is the actual timeline in which there is this government that is basically oppressing women in general. And the handmaids are the women who are deemed fertile, and fertility is a problem, so they would be they would be dispatched at those high-ranking officials' households, and their job would be to live in that household and have sex with that high-ranking official just so that they can reproduce. And it wasn't anything that was, you know, you think, oh yeah, all her job is to have sex, so it's kind of like a harem, it's sexual. It's nothing like that. It's very stark and cold, and it talks a lot about feminism. The last book I wanted to talk about is The Martian by Andy Weir. This is a book that I wanted to include in here just because I found it to be funny, and I giggled and laughed throughout this book. It's about an astronaut who goes into space, goes to Mars, and gets left behind, and he needs to figure out a way to get back to Earth and survive. And the narrator is so funny that I really enjoyed the book just for what it was. Now, I think that pretty much wraps it up. These are all of my favorite books of 2015. If you've read any of them or would like to read any of them, please let me know what you thought down in the comments, because I'd love to discuss them with you. See you later.